It was the 22nd of October 2006. Fernando Alonso had just crossed the finish line in second place at the Brazilian Grand Prix. That finish is enough to secure him second in the World Championship, making him Formula One's youngest ever double world champion. It's also Michael Schumacher's final race. It's a changing of the guard. Alonso, at just 25, is ready to take on the mantle. It surely won't be long before he wins his third world title. Surely. But what Alonso does next changes everything, and it all stems from the 3 team moves that would ruin his legacy. Fernando Alonso Diaz was born in July 1981 in the north of Spain. His father was a factory mechanic and his mother worked in a department store. They're a working class family, and alongside Fernando, they had a second child, Lorena, Fernando's older sister. It was for Lorena that their father built a go-kart for. Unfortunately, Lorena wasn't interested in the car, but Alonso was. At the age of 3, Alonso started karting. Alonso's father painted the go-kart in the famous red and white colours of McLaren, and like many of us, Alonso became a Senna fan. Senna would go on to win 3 world titles, a number that stayed in Alonso's mind as he set out to carve his own path to success. And it's with McLaren where Alonso makes his first error. Back in 2005, Alonso was racing with the Renault team. Coming home in third place at the Brazilian Grand Prix sealed Alonso's first world title. He finished the race behind a McLaren 1-2, their first 1-2 in 5 years. Whilst waiting to go on the podium, there was a quiet moment between Alonso and McLaren's team boss, Ron Dennis. Dennis congratulated Alonso on winning his title. There, Alonso replied with, "Well, the thing about you guys is that you make it so difficult because you keep developing your cars." Dennis responded, "You could be part of it." Alonso simply said, "I'd like to be." Dennis was left stunned. After Alonso confirmed he was serious, a deal was struck just 3 weeks later. Alonso signed a 3-year contract starting from the 2007 season. He'd still have to complete the 06 season of Renault before moving over. Whilst Alonso went on to win 7 of Renault's races in 2006, McLaren didn't even win a single race that year. Had Alonso made a catastrophic error deciding to sign for McLaren so early? With both Renault and Ferrari racking up over 200 points in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren only achieved 110 points. It would be a massive own goal if Renault remained the team to beat whilst Alonso was stuck at McLaren. It was all fun and games at the beginning of the season. A new look Alonso appeared in McLaren colours, a fresh haircut, and a shave to conform with Ron Dennis's strict dress code policy. Alonso's teammate for the year was a rookie, Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton was the first driver of black heritage to reach the pinnacle of the sport. Hamilton's skin colour and the speed he showed in the first race of the season brought a lot of media attention, especially from the British press. Alonso had gone to McLaren expecting to be the team leader. He's a double world champion after all, winning back-to-back titles. And after Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve's retirement, he's now the only world champion on the grid. Even though it wasn't in his contract, he seemed to remember Dennis verbally agreeing to it. And Ron Dennis did treat him as a team leader for the first 5 races, but the pace of Hamilton and the pressure that put on Dennis, he decided to treat them as equal going forward. Alonso wasn't happy. He told Dennis that the 2 drivers shouldn't be racing each other. For Alonso to get the best out of himself, he likes to be in a situation where the team is built around him. Having someone as quick, being treated equal, started to turn out to be a struggle for Alonso. In 2007, the drivers had to qualify with a race fuel load. For the first 5 races, Alonso had the optimum qualifying and race fuel strategy, while Hamilton always had 1 lap more fuel in qualifying. After Monaco, for equal treatment, McLaren alternated who would have the optimum strategy. Obviously, both cars couldn't stop on the same lap, so even though they had the same fuel load for qualifying, they alternate who would have the favourable fuel strategy for the race. As they reached the 11th race of the season in Hungary, it was Alonso's turn to have the optimum fuel strategy. During the fuel burn phase in qualifying, Hamilton was supposed to let Alonso pass to burn the correct amount of fuel. Hamilton didn't comply, and the team repeatedly told him to let Alonso pass, but he ignored their calls. This led to Alonso being disadvantaged as he had more fuel than his teammate. Alonso took matters into his own hands. He decided to drop back, putting himself in front of Hamilton on their runs and blocked him in the pits so that Hamilton couldn't complete his lap. The next morning, Alonso threatened Dennis that if the team did not correct the wrong of Hamilton's blocking, it would then reveal to the FIA emails that the team had of Ferrari's car. Not long afterwards, Dennis and Alonso negotiated an early release from the contract. Alonso had totally blown his relationship with the team. For 2008, Alonso would join the 4th best team on the grid, whereas McLaren went on to win the title with Hamilton. Alonso's first team move that killed his chances of a 3rd world title was, rather than working with the McLaren team and turning it into a family, it was part of destroying the relationship with them. And with that, the opportunity to fight for the title the following year. But the decision Alonso made about where to drive after McLaren could go down as one of the biggest mistakes in F1 history, a mistake that could haunt him for the rest of his life. Alonso's previous team Renault didn't secure any wins in the 2007 season, which only highlighted that Alonso's initial move to McLaren was in hindsight the right one. In fact, Renault only managed one podium that season, a 2nd place in the chaotic, rain-soaked Japanese Grand Prix. Freshly out of his contract with McLaren, Alonso now faced a crucial decision about his next move. McLaren was a top team, as was Ferrari. With both options off the table, Alonso had to look at options further down the grid. Despite a turbulent year, Alonso remained hot property, with several teams showing interest in him. Rumours were circulating that Toyota were interested in Alonso, but despite having a big budget behind them, the team had only managed to score 13 points in the 2007 season. Alonso, on the other hand, scored 109 points alone. Motorsport magazine reported that Alonso wanted the right money, a competitive car, but also only a 1-year deal, as he was eyeing out a Ferrari move in the future. With Renault team principal Flavio Briatore also doubling as Alonso's manager, Renault were the favourites to sign the Spaniard. After a year of feeling unloved, returning to a familiar team could be a factor in Alonso's next decision. But before making up his mind, Alonso received another offer, one that could change the course of history. In Madrid, Spain, Christian Horner and Helmut Marko arrived for a meeting with Alonso's representatives. Horner and Marko brought with them an offer, a 2-year contract to race for Red Bull. Red Bull at the time was a young team. This was only their 2nd season in Formula 1, scoring 24 points and finishing only 1 place ahead of Toyota. Alonso and his representatives revealed that they were only interested in a 1-year deal. After relaying this information to Dietrich Mateschitz, the Red Bull owner, he insisted that it would be a 2-year contract or nothing. And with that, the negotiations stalled. Alonso ended up returning to Renault. Even though Renault was technically the best team out of the 3, judging purely by the 2007 championship standings, going back was still a significant step down. The championship battle was once again between McLaren and Ferrari, and Renault wasn't even the 3rd fastest team. That was Sauber. It took Alonso until the 15th race of the season to finally get a podium, getting lucky with a safety car at the Singapore Grand Prix to claim a win. That fortunate timing of the safety car would be a major talking point a year later. However, Alonso followed that up with another win in the next race, as well as a 2nd place finish in the final race of the season in Brazil. Alonso surprised everyone by racing for Renault again in 2009. Most had assumed he'd signed a Ferrari contract long ago for that season, but those rumours proved to be false. With a regulation change that vaulted Brawn as the team to beat, it was Adrian Newey's Red Bulls that would also challenge for the title. Funnily enough, Honda, the team Brawn was born out of, offered Alonso a contract for the 2009 season. Briatore, Alonso's manager, may have predicted Honda's eventual withdrawal, given the financial crisis at the time. But it's crazy to think that if Alonso made different decisions, it could have been in both of the title-chasing teams that year. Instead, he was racing with an uncompetitive Renault and would only manage 1 podium and 26 points for the season. But in September, Alonso finally got what he wanted since leaving McLaren. He signed a 3-year contract to race for Ferrari. The Spaniard would reach his peak at Ferrari, turning 30 in red. He put in some of his best and most memorable performances whilst there. Plus, it all started well, with a win in his first race at Bahrain, and Alonso would go on to be involved in the title fight twice in his first 3 years with the team. Sadly, he lost both battles in the final race of the season. He managed to get himself in those positions even without the best car. That Red Bull seat that had declined in 2007 was now in the process of winning title after title. Those championship defeats were incredibly hard for Alonso to accept. At the time, he didn't rate Vettel's achievements, dismissing them as merely a result of having a dominant car. A Ferrari insider is quoted as saying to the BBC, from mid-2010 to 2014, Fernando was the best driver in the world. There's no argument about that. But even if you're the best driver in the world, you still need a car beneath you that can do the job. By the summer of 2013, things were starting to go downhill at Ferrari. They were losing much more ground and Alonso began to lose faith. After finishing 5th at the Hungarian Grand Prix, Alonso was asked what he wanted for his birthday. He simply replied, someone else's car. Obviously, this didn't go down well with Ferrari, and it didn't look good in the press. But even with a poor year, there was one last hope for Alonso and Ferrari. In 2014, the new V8 power units were being introduced, shifting F1 away from being a car design formula to one focused on engines. Before the season began, it was predicted that the teams that would lead the championship would be the manufactured teams. With Ferrari having their own engine, it made sense for Alonso to believe that this rule change would finally make them competitive, allowing them to beat Red Bull, who were using a customer Renault engine. And as predicted, the customer team, Red Bull, lost their advantage in 2014, especially as Renault's engine was a dud. But Ferrari also fumbled. It wasn't them who came out on top in pre-season testing, it was Mercedes. And with engine development frozen, Ferrari knew they were in trouble. On track, Alonso completely outclassed his teammate Kimi Raikkonen, outqualifying him 16-3 with an average gap of more than half a second per lap. He was only beaten by Kimi in a race once all year. But despite his performance, Alonso only managed one podium that season. Alonso had a contract for a further 2 seasons until the end of 2016. But early in that 2014 season, Ferrari began negotiations to extend it for a further 3 years until 2019. But the talks fell through. Alonso wasn't convinced by Ferrari's future, and he tried to add escape clauses into that contract. To Ferrari's new management at the time, this didn't seem like the attitude of a motivated or confident driver. It screamed doubt. Alonso had lost faith in the Ferrari project and wanted out. Ferrari offered him an early release from his contract and Alonso took it. Where he went next would turn out to be one of the most painful years of his career. As mentioned earlier, to be successful in this generation of cars, you need to be a team with a manufacturer engine. Ron Dennis and McLaren knew this, so they made big plans with Honda, who were making their return to Formula One. The excitement was palpable. The McLaren-Honda partnership is one of the most romanticised in the Formula One history, thanks to those iconic Senna-Prost victories in the late 80s. But this wasn't 1988, it was 2015. Would they be able to replicate that success? Alonso thought so. Despite some history between him and Ron Dennis, Ron offered Alonso a 3-year contract worth $40 million a year. For Alonso, winning that 3rd world title with a McLaren Honda would be a dream come true, something he'd fantasized about as a kid, looking up to his hero, Ayrton Senna. Unfortunately, that McLaren Honda project was a disaster. Nothing like the 80s glory days, with frequent DNFs, engine failures, and even outbursts of GP2 engines. Alonso's time with McLaren was painful. He spent 4 agonising years with the team, never finishing on the podium, and his highest placing in the Drivers' Championship was 10th. But what if Alonso had stayed with Ferrari and signed that extension until 2019? Alonso's replacement, Sebastian Vettel, went on to win 14 of Ferrari's 17 wins between 2015 and 2019. Vettel was Hamilton's main challenger for the title in both 2017 and 2018, though the German made some costly mistakes along the way. The gap between Vettel and Raikkonen was much closer than when Alonso had been destroying his teammate. A Ferrari insider once told a BBC journalist that if it was Alonso in the car instead of Vettel, it probably would have clinched the title in 2018. But instead, Alonso was fighting for the lower positions in the top 10, a talented driver on the track, but off it, not so much. When he should have stayed at McLaren in 2007, he signed to go back to Renault. When he should have moved to Red Bull, he held out and signed with Ferrari. When he should have stayed at Ferrari, he forced to move out and signed for McLaren. Unfortunately, always the wrong decisions. If any one of these decisions were reversed, Alonso may well have won that third world title he so badly craves. Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.